for those of you who don't know, and I've heard this wrongly said multiple times in the media, Jake Browning is not a rookie. I have seen multiple news articles calling him a rookie. He's been in the league since 2019. He was on the Vikings practice squad. And he never started for the Vikings, but when they cut him, they never told him. They sent him back to his hotel and they told his agent that he'd been cut, but they never told Jake. And he did not like that for obvious reasons. Well, after he beat them as the Bengals starter, he screamed, "You never should have cut me." And in his interview, he was kind of like, yeah, this was a revenge game for me. Well, a few days later, he said, I wish I hadn't have made this a revenge game for me. I want it to be a team effort. I feel kind of selfish having made it a revenge game for myself. So I want to know, what do you guys think about revenge games? I mean, we've seen a couple revenge games this season where teams players have to face their old teams and are hoping to beat them to prove that they are better than what the team thought they were. What are your guys' thoughts?
I mean, I guess it just kind of depends, like, on the situation when it comes to like these revenge games. I didn't really see a need for Browning to have like a revenge game against the Vikings. It wasn't like he like lost out on a starting position. He was just kind of he was a practice squad guy that got cut, which is like unfortunate, and now he's a starter. But it's not like the Vikings were ever going to look to put him ever on that high pedestal. I mean, obviously the Bengals took a chance on him, which is huge. Some quarterbacks never get that opportunity. So for him to have that revenge game is kind of good. But I mean, I feel like the Vikings are fine, with or without Browning currently. I mean, I feel like, yeah, they've been kind of struggling a little bit because they've been throwing in Mullins and they threw in they pulled Dobbs at one point and stuff. So, I mean, revenge games are weird, in my opinion, but it really depends on the situation of it, because it's one of those things where it's like when Tom Brady went to verse the Patriots as Tampa Bay, was that really a revenge game? Or was that just another game for him? Because didn't he choose to leave? Like, they weren't planning on re-signing him, and he didn't force them to re-sign him, so he just kind of left. So, I mean, that's sometimes a lot of players where they're just like, oh, you didn't offer me enough money, I'm going to prove what I've got somewhere else. And then you come around and you play them. It doesn't really amount to anything. It's like, oh, wow, this guy put up 100 yards receiving and a touchdown against his former team. And then you don't hear about it again. It's just all right, a win's a win. And then you just kind of move forward. I feel like it's just kind of a interesting way of looking at it.
Stan?
Yeah, I mean, the Jake Browning thing is just kind of weird because no one really knew who he was. It's not like they cut him to show him something. They just needed another spot on their practice squad. So it's kind of weird to call that a revenge game. But in general, I love revenge games. I mean, throw some beef in there. They're always so much fun. We had a couple of revenge games this year. We beat the Broncos, who were talking trash on us this year, and that was really enjoyable. For me as a fan, it's great. We're playing Bill Belichick in what is likely to be his last ever game for the Patriots. Boy, do I want to win that one. Revenge games are awesome. And do I think revenge games are inappropriate because they take the focus off the team? I would not say so. Because for the team, you're with your guys there. You're with your quarterback. You're with your linebacker who got cut from whichever team. Right? So you're with your guys, you're with the tradition of your team on staying with your teammates there, and that just adds a little extra juice to that game, a little extra flames to the fire.
So, I mean, I agree. And the Jets did have a ton of revenge games, especially the most notable, like you mentioned, the Broncos with Nathaniel Hackett and Sean Payton saying he shouldn't be a coach. And that's a whole nother debate whether that's true or not, but the fact that the Jets were able to beat the Broncos was huge for Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator.
I am going to add one thing about revenge games, though. I feel like it shouldn't be player-based. I feel like a lot of people look at it as player-based. I feel like it really should be team-based, because like there are still NFL games that are kind of like those revenge games where it's like, oh yeah, the Patriots go in and beat the Steelers 4 times in a row, and then the Steelers beat the Patriots for the first time ever in like 10 years or whatever. It's not actually how it went down, but they beat them for the first time in a while. That's like kind of like a revenge game because the Patriots had caused us so many issues in the past. And then we go in like 2018 and beat them, or 2019 or whatever, and we beat them. So, I mean, I feel like sometimes there are those revenge games. I mean, obviously it kind of can't like translate from like regular season into playoffs because will the Patriots ever really get a revenge game against the Eagles for beating them in the Super Bowl? Well, they might play in the season, but what does that really prove? I mean, you're more likely to get that in like college football where you're getting like a revenge championship game. But I feel like it definitely should be more team oriented. But go ahead, finish what you were saying, Josh.
Well, I was gonna ask you, James Conner. He's on the Cardinals now, and he has been for a few years. But he went to Pitt, played for the Steelers. Then he came in, and the Cardinals beat the Steelers. So, as a fan, how does that bother you at all to see him and be like, wow, we could have had James Conner and kept him in the city that he's been in?
Well, they didn't want to keep him just because he was just like his contract was going to be high, and he's injury prone. So the Steelers weren't obviously going to keep him. As a fan, I kind of just accepted that because I mean, no player really is always guaranteed to stay in the same place forever. So, but seeing him come back and do well, it kind of makes me happy for him that he's doing well for another team. I don't really think it bothers me because, with each new NFL year, you're going to get new players, you're going to have a different scheme, you're going to play differently, you're going to have, different offense and defensive weapons. So, I mean, for me, from a fan perspective, I don't let it bother me. But I know some Steelers fans, it like rocked their world. They're like, we should have never let go of James Conner. And the problem is with Steelers fans is they were the same Steelers fans that were saying we should have gotten rid of James Conner a long time ago. So, I mean, I was happy that he did well. I'm not surprised he did well. After all, he played at Pitt for multiple years. I mean, he had cancer for a little bit, so I believe he came back for his last year, which would have been his senior year or his junior year. He came back one of those years, but he popped off, and then he got drafted by the Steelers, and he did really well, and he's still doing really well. But he knows Pittsburgh inside and out, so it wouldn't surprise me that he plays well there.
And then final thing before we move on to talk about the Steelers again. What do you guys? And I get he's a practice squad player, and this is only one side of things. And Jake even said, like, the coach that's there, the GM that's there, aren't the same guys that were there when I was cut. But what do you think about the Vikings, like, not, according to Jake, not telling Jake that he was cut from the team? They're just telling him to go back to the hotel, and then him finding out through a text from his agent later that he'd been cut.
I mean, that's terrible business. I mean, that's just it's disrespecting a player. And even if he's like a practice squad guy, think about what most practice squad guys do in the league. They end up re-signing the same practice squad every other year. Most guys stay with the same team. So the way they did that was really badly managed. And I think, if anything, it kind of shows why that GM and that staff is not still there. They didn't really do a great job with that. And it is very disrespectful. So I do understand Browning having some amount of like anger towards that organization after being treated like that. I mean, you lose your job like that in a second, and you don't even know it. That's the worst part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think with it, I want to kind of like ask you, Stan. Is that staff that you mentioned, are they even still there anymore? Like a lot of that staff? Because I mean, either of you guys, like the ones that like cut Browning from the practice squad?
No, he said that it's different. I know the head coach is different. The head coach would have been Zimmer, and Kevin O'Connell's the head coach now. And the GM, I believe, is also different. And he said most of the staff there is different now as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like at that point, it's even less of a revenge game because like, who are you getting revenge on at that point? That's why like I feel like it was like kind of a weird situation for him. I don't think he's like in any way wrong, because I'm sure, you know, everybody lets their emotions get the best of him, and obviously he's come out and apologized and said it should have been more of a team effort. But I mean, I feel like since it's like it's different people, there's like nobody you're really proving anything to, you know, with some of these revenge games. I mean, like maybe James Conner proving it to like Mike Tomlin, but I mean, like it's like, you know, different coordinators at times and stuff, and like, you know, it's just always changing. So it's one of those things where it's like, are they really revenge games, or I don't really know. I mean, because I've never really like experienced a revenge game where I'm like, oh, like this game, this, you know, like I don't know, but it's just